David, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Hi, Annie. How are
Oh my
you?
goodness. I am so excited to have you on the show because we've known each other for quite a while, and I've heard pieces of your story here and there, but we've never sat down to really dig in. And so I'm excited to get to ask you all the questions and to share your very unique story with the listener today. So first off, let me just ask, because some people grow up, and I have friends who all their lives they knew they wanted to be a doctor. And so they went down that path and now they're a doctor. Some people all their lives they knew they wanted to be in real estate and now they're in real estate. But I don't think you had that kind of story. You had a very different path that you had wanted for your life or projected for your life. And somehow real estate came to be part of your path. So take us along that story. Share with us, how did you get into real estate?
I think it's fairly common for people in real estate to not have thought they were going to be in real estate. I think it's a lot of people who end up there for various reasons. And I want to say, of our 23-person team and all the real estate we sell, we're closing in on $3 billion of sales. A lot of our people have a similar story to what mine is, which is unusual. A lot of us were creatives. I grew up in suburban Los Angeles and was a total theater kid. While I was in college, I was working professionally in theater and doing some commercials and things in Los Angeles. And then, so I had all my union cards and all that. And then while I was filling out law school applications, I got cast in a Broadway show out of an LA audition. And I thought, well, this has been my dream. I got to go do this. And
Yeah.
this will be differentiating on my law school applications in a year or two. So I fly to New York, and just my life changes. Like 10 years zip by. That show, I cast another Broadway show, and just I started to make I was a working actor for 10 years. And it was, I bought my other great real estate story for me is I was in some roommate situations I didn't love. And it was in the early 90s. And this opportunity came along to buy a studio apartment on the Upper West Side of New York for $49,000 that was all renovated. I borrowed $5,000 from my parents. Very lucky to have been able to do that. I paid it back very quickly and bought this studio apartment, and with a $600 a month maintenance. So I sort of anchored my finances in this thing that I could afford. And even though I was working, 3 or 4 regional theater jobs in one year or another, and pulling in an income of, $22,000, $24,000 a year living in New York City, I could get by. And I wasn't having to sort of run around or take on too many not take on jobs I didn't want to do in between, because I had this sort of financial base. And that was completely affordable and gave me the life I wanted. So again, freedom from real estate in that moment and taking advantage of a down market. Yeah, I got to do some great things. Like I did a ton of shows, and I started a theater company upstate New York with a bunch of friends. And I have a dear friend, childhood friend, who's a big Broadway producer. And when I wasn't working, I was running around being an errand person for him. Or he and I were also very much caught up in the days of ACT UP and in the world of AIDS activism and LGBTQ activism. We were involved in civil disobedience and things like that. And he was such a producer. Our civil disobedience was, it was just a hot time politically for the LGBTQ community. And we'd be stopping traffic on Fifth Avenue, and we'd have, Susan Sarandon there, and helping her get arrested. And, just we were producing, political events, and under him, I was just hanging out with him. But he was also, that relationship informed so much of who I am also as a person. He was the first person to produce Hedwig and the Angry Inch in its most raw forms, and eventually produced it on Broadway, and that's where he won his Tony Award, which was just this radical piece back in the day. And just to be in the midst of that was extraordinary. And seeing what he was doing, and seeing this theater piece that even I couldn't understand, he was able to see it, and that's his genius. But he even said to me at one point, like, I'm watching John Cameron Mitchell, crack eggs on his chest and smear makeup and sort of scream and shout, and I thought, oh, that's not my cup of tea, but wow. and my friend David, who was the producer, said to me at one point, like, should I get the film rights for this? And I was like, oh, David, this is never going to be a movie. And of course it was. And I'm wrong about all of it. But anyway, it was a rich and wonderful time. And there came a point where, for me as a I don't know, Enneagram 3 or ambitious person, it was wearing me down this sort of trajectory of A doesn't lead to B to C to D to E, and it just theater is always like A B C D back to A B C D E, yeah, back to
Mhm.
A, and
Yeah.
for me that wore on me. I was going into my 30s, and that voice of like I need more stability in my life was reemerging. And I was fortunate to have been on a national tour of a Broadway show, and while I was in the Bay Area, I met my husband Andrew,
Mhm.
and that was an extraordinary life change because it was just a deep connection, and led to a year and a half of long distance relationship, and a point where I said to him, he was going to move to New York and stay in my studio apartment, and I said, well, why don't I move out to the Bay Area for a month? You have a
Yeah.
bedroom apartment, and we'll just see how that goes. And I just never went back. But that
Wow.
was the beginning of like that grief process of like
Yeah.
who am I in this new environment? And I did theater around San Francisco, but it wasn't particularly satisfying. And
Mm.
ended up working at a magazine called The Industry Standard for about a year and a half, which covered the internet economy, and that imploded when the first dot bust happened in the year 2000. And in the 5 years since the day I met Andrew, we had a year and a half relationship. I moved out. We bought our first, I sold that apartment in New York. It gave us a down payment to buy a modest house in Alameda. I had gone through job transfers, and we were adopting two kids out of the foster care system.
Mm.
Like in a 5 year thing, like every bit of our lives changed. But what happened near the end of that 5 year period was everyone at the magazine was like, the magazine folded, and there were just no marketing jobs or jobs anywhere to be found that were particularly interesting. And so I held my nose and went into real estate because as a complete default, like if you told my 25 or 15-year-old self I was
Yeah.
a real estate agent, I would have thrown myself off the nearest building in
Yeah.
absolute, because I thought it was a sales job and I wanted nothing to do with
Mm.
it. I was doing it simply because my real estate agent was a totally nice guy, and I thought, well, that was he was not some solicitous predatory monster. So maybe I can do this for a minute while I'm waiting for a marketing coordinator job to show up.
Yeah. Right.
And it turned into this incredible career that I did not see coming.
Yeah.
And small business
Wow.
and changing people's lives and partnering with my husband
Yeah.
and creating a 23-person team based on values and connection between us all. And it's been the best, most unexpected ride I could have ever imagined.
To see you on this side of it and all the success that you've garnered. I mean, I don't think there's like a homeowner in the East Bay in the Bay Area who doesn't know the Gunderman Group. Everybody knows the Gunderman Group, and your signs are everywhere. You're well renowned for your quality in not only the homes that you put on the market, but the service that you provide people. And I
Mm.
think you're so well known for that. I want to ask you this because I think looking in from the outside, a lot of people like you and I have a certain perception of what real estate is. They have this notion, it's almost like used car salesman, right? Like the pushy, like sleazy, untrustworthy person who just wants to sell you on something. But you've created this values based business, this beautiful business. And there's creativity in that, there's love in that, there's nurturing in that. Tell us
Mm.
a little bit about that journey.
Thank you for all that. That's so nice of you to say. And I think there's plenty of people in the East Bay who don't know who we are. I love the idea that they all know who we are.
Yes.
More know about us than I ever expected to, and that feels really good. And this is a moment too. I want to say, like, we're just post 2024 election, and everything is so raw right now. And it's actually and we're doing some team restructuring, and it's just pushed me into this sort of zone of reflecting on who we are and how we got here, and really like what's our genesis? Who are we? We're 25 years in. Like, what is it that matters? And as we sort of move towards whatever this next chapter is, or is there a legacy and does it push forward? Like, you have these moments when you sort of have to go back and go back to your mission, go back to your values, and we've been on that. And I just feel like we as a country are in that moment too, where like if you look at the sort of values of democracy, they're just really challenged right now. I find that's my point of view on it, and it's just a time to really get back into like who are you and how you're going to show up in the world.
you have been that light for people. And it's very clear as you tell the story that you were never out to make a big pile of money. You were never out to really make a name for yourself. You just wanted to have that connection with people. And it's no surprise to me, with that as your anchor, all the success that you've had and all the people that you attract to you, because they want to be part of that light.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, thank you. I'm just, um, also, I just really love collaboration. Like the theater things I always enjoyed
Yeah.
were these sort of like collaborative pieces, or where everybody's getting a voice, and like it's not just like some dictatorial person telling you where to stand, but we're all sort of like throwing out ideas, and one idea sparks another idea, and something starts to evolve. So that's another value of our team is, although I'm sort of the leader of it, my husband and I are the leaders of it. Like I don't love hierarchies. I like us all to just be like a working ensemble, you know.
Yeah.
And I that's sort of, and for me that's another lesson is that I sort of have my, especially right now, my concerns about just broad capitalism. I don't really love just I feel like capitalism is run amok. I mean, I really love
Mhm.
capitalism. Is a wonderful thing in so many ways, and the freedoms it creates, but it just can't be the for me it can't be the altar at which we all kneel. Like I just think that capitalism that serves, I guess I'm a social democrat. Like I just want the money we make to serve the collective, not the individual. And or at least keep in mind, I just think that we've sort of lost our way with CEO being crazy. Like my dad's generation, like it was easier to get by. Companies took care of their employees in ways that we don't do anymore, and just sort of that ethos of like, caring for one another has broken down a lot. And I want our business to reflect the value that we feel, which is that we care for one another.
Well, David, your energy is infectious and your story is so inspirational. I know that especially people here in the Bay Area, but even people who are, all over the country and all over the world listening may want to learn a little bit more about you and get in touch with you or your team. So tell us, if they did want to follow up, what's the best place that they can go?
Oh, please reach out if that's true. Maybe the first order of business is thegundermangroup.com, thegundermangroup.com. You can also follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, at ampersand the Gunderman Group. My phone numbers and emails are in all those places, so I would love to hear from you.
Amazing. David Gunderman, real estate agent, investor, and co-founder of the Gunderman Group. David, this has been such a joy. Thank you so much for being here with us and our listeners
It's
today.
a lot. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.